In the name I am that I am, Sanat Kumara, I call forth the light of the living word, beloved Elohim, beloved archangels, beloved mighty Choans of the rays and the lords of karma. I call for the action of beloved Pallas Athena, beloved goddess of liberty, beloved Nada, beloved Kuan Yin, beloved Portia, beloved great divine director, beloved all-seeing eye of God, Cyclopeia. Let God's will be done, let God's will be done, let God's will be done. I do in the action of the sacred fire in this hour, descend on mighty cosmos, secret rays. I am the holding of the balance of Lord Gautama Buddha, beloved Sanat Kumara and the seven holy Kumaras. I call upon the sacred fire, I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved mighty, I am present, come forth in this hour of the victory. Come forth in this hour of the victory of the God's flame. I demand the full power, beloved mighty, exceed with us this night. Beloved Jesus, send to me, Lord, my Savior, Gautama and Sanat Kumara. Come forth now in the victory of the God's flame. Send to light 10,000 suns. Beloved mighty, expand, mighty, expand, mighty, expand. Around this footstool now. I call upon the great central sun magnet. I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved expand, beloved expand, beloved expand. I call upon the electronic solar rings of the central sun, the seraphim of God. I call for the electronic fire rings.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. This day's flavor is astrology, and it is navigating the astrological matrix. I am in the pilot's seat, the captain's chair, and I'm locked in and ready to go. I had a night of cleansing. I went to the local sauna and got into the sauna and sweated. We've got this solar eclipse coming up, and I think one of the things that we as a culture and a society have lost touch with is the ability to hold these events in some form of true personal regard, meaning that we don't often take the time to integrate them in our lives in a very conscious fashion. If we lived in a quote-unquote ancient culture, there's probably a pretty good probability that we would know that it was coming, depending upon the culture. Because some of the ancient cultures, specifically, the Mayans, were very adept at being able to plot out where the most personal planets would be. And if we go back to Babylon and even pre-Babylon, Sumeria, there was a very sophisticated system of astrology in place, which would include the movements of the moon and the sun. So there would be, at least for the priestly caste, maybe not with the masses, because the priestly caste like to have power over the masses, and they still do. So the priestly caste would be aware of the eclipses, and then they would prepare themselves accordingly, and then they would use that power theoretically to cast a spell, literally and figuratively, over the masses. All you have to do is watch the film Apocalypto. And that eclipse, apparently, in the film, and it is Hollywood, that eclipse was unnoticed by the high mind priest, the jaguar priest. And when the eclipse came, what did he do? He used the power of the eclipse to, again, influence the masses. I think it's a really interesting scene in the movie. It's a very pivotal scene, and there is prophecy that is in the movie woven into that scene as part of the narrative. And if you haven't seen Apocalypto, I highly recommend it. Mel Gibson is a truly polarizing figure, but I think Apocalypto is a very important film. Now, there are Mayan scholars, there are people that are into indigenous culture that take issue with it because of how the Mayans were portrayed. Well, look, all you've got to do is cruise down to Chichen Itza and then study the stelae, that are on the temple walls, and you'll see. I've been there. I mean, there are people walking around carved into those walls with heads in their hands and blood dripping off the heads. It's carved into the wall. Everything is there. The Mayan movie is there. All you have to do is follow it. So to say that the Mayans were not these savage people, look, the high Maya or the later Maya they were bloodthirsty. So in the movie, the jaguar priest takes a moment during the eclipse to hold sway over the people. But the narrative is interesting because in the film there is a young girl who comes out, and she comes out of the woods, and for me, she's one of the more pivotal figures in the movie because symbolically she represents not just the feminine voice, because she is a girl. They chose a girl. They did not use a boy. They chose a girl, so she is the lunar polarity to the eclipse. She is the eclipse itself. She is the harbinger of the eclipse. And when we talk about the feminine principle, we're talking about the high priestess, and we're talking about the ability to live in a subconscious realm, in a subconscious space. Now I'm going to stop here for just a second. There are two people that have been online for the last 16 minutes holding. I will get to you, I promise. Hang in there for another 5 minutes. Just let me finish the intro, and we'll jump into some readings today. But I need to talk about the eclipse. So she is there, and she is the manifestation of the priestess, albeit in prepubescent form. She is also obviously suffering from some form of disease or some form of plague. So now we have this messenger who is female, who is young. So we have the unadulterated, notice the word unadulterated. Unadulterated means uncontaminated by the perception of being an adult. That's what the word means, unadulterated. So it's an unadulterated message. It comes from this place of innocence, and yet she has been racked with experience. And when we have innocence converging with experience, what do we have the opportunity for? Prophecy. Because that is the Blakean model. Innocence converging with experience, transmutated is imagination. And for Blake, imagination equaled prophecy. Blake was a Freemason, by the way. So anyway, that's a very pivotal moment in the film, because what does she do? She prophesies the coming eclipse, and she prophesies the one who will bring the fall to the high Maya, or to the late Maya. And she even prophesies the arrival of the Spaniards, who, by the way, are the ones that absolutely level the Mayan civilization. And the reason they were able to level the Mayan civilization was, well, because they had superior technology, even though the Maya had superior numbers, and they had a more fully fleshed out version of a brand new God. And they were able to transfer that fully fleshed out version of a newer God onto the Maya, and then come in over the top of the power of their old and dying gods, the gods who were no longer providing for them in terms of their land, in terms of their ability to be fertile. The Mayan gods were failing them. And now we have a newer version of a different God coming in along with superior technology, albeit lesser numbers. And the other reason why the Spaniards were able to defeat the Maya with stunningly less numbers is because they had infiltrated the highest level of the Mayan aristocracy, or the hierarchy of the Maya, the high priests and the rulers of the Maya. Essentially, they bought them off. That's what happened. And therefore, it was much easier to move about and do what they needed to do. Not unlike today, although Mel Gibson leaves that part of the movie out of the movie. So there is that scene in Apocalypto with that girl. It's a very powerful scene. And in a lot of ways, we are that girl. We are that young girl. And we are trying, to the best of our ability, I hate the word try, to find the prophetic voice, because our innocence has been robbed from us. And yet we are in a state of innocence. We're in a state of spiritual innocence because we're not at a place where we can command our spiritual destiny in a way that can shape and change the landscape of the third dimension with a mere thought. We're not there. We're getting there. We're in a state of spiritual adolescence in some ways. And what are we doing? We're starting to bounce up against some very definable limits. They're in our face now. The definable limits are in our face now. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, if you heard about it, but the United States and Russia are doing training together in Colorado. Why are they doing that? Why are they training together in Colorado? Because we're about to see some very definable limits coming our way. And it doesn't matter whether Mitt Romney or Barack Obama is going to be president, those definable limits are going to be in our face. And we are that girl because we have been hammered with experience. We've been hammered with what happened in 2008 with the economy. We were hammered with 9/11. We're hammered all the time. The trauma, the social trauma is hammering us all the time. And we are literally all trying to stay afloat and dog paddle in these roiling seas of chaos and experience. And now we have an eclipse coming. And I will tell you that and I did a post on the eclipse on my site. And I'm going to do a follow-up to that eclipse post because I am troubled by this eclipse. I'm going to tell you right now, I am troubled by it. The path of the eclipse takes place in the western part of the United States and reaches as far south as to New Mexico. Now, this is not a full total eclipse, it's a partial eclipse. We get a total eclipse in November, by the way. That's a biggie. It's the flip side of this. It's the Taurus to Scorpio cycle eclipse. But this eclipse, nonetheless, is going to be very powerful. And there are some major events happening on the eclipse. G8 are meeting in Camp David. NATO is meeting in Chicago. Who else knows what other meetings are taking place in other places? I have a dark feeling about this eclipse. It's just the way it is. I wish I could supplant it. I wish I could infuse my ability to see something positive in the darkness of night. And I can't do it most of the time. I can find something, and I'm working internally with this eclipse to try to understand it at a deeper level. And I'm going to write about it more today. I have more exercising to do around this eclipse. I felt incomplete with that post, even though it was one of my longer posts recently. So that's where I am with the eclipse. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read about some of the history of eclipses later in the show. And what's really interesting, I'm going to make this note, okay? I don't know whether you've noticed this yet, but defining time by AD and BC, that's a thing of the past, people. They're in this BCE and CE, right? And part of the reason for that is that there is a movement to begin to remove Christianity and the image, the archetypal image and the mythological image, the historical image, the religious image, the spiritual image, the transcendent image of Jesus. They want to remove that from our consciousness. They want to eradicate Christianity from history. Now, I'm not a born-again Christian. There are certain precepts of Christianity. I was born into it. even though as a kid I couldn't stand church. The first time I ever went to church, by the way, I was 4 years old. It was in New Jersey. My mother, I'll never forget this. It's a memory that is as bright as day to this day. I walk up to the church with my mother, my grandfather, my grandmother, and my uncle. The doors of the church swing open, and I literally let out a blood-curdling cry because the first thing I see is the stained glass and the organ music and the guy on the cross, and I am not about to cross that threshold. Do not bring me into that church. I kicked and screamed and hollered. I did not want to go in. And then they took me down to Sunday school, and all I wanted to do was just play and disrupt Sunday school. They must have thought they had the devil's spawn on their hands as a kid. I never liked church, but there are things about there are precepts in there that I think are extremely important. I think the whole Old Testament is, don't even get me started on the Old Testament. But anyway, they're trying to eradicate the image of Jesus, and they're doing it one initial at a time. Okay, so let me do this. Let me get into some calls. Let's talk to some people, the patient people that have been holding online, and we're going to talk a little astrology, look at some charts, and after I clear the lines, I'm going to talk more about eclipses. I'm going to read you some of the vital history of eclipses on the planets, historically and mythologically. Okay, let's go to the 5 and dime. Hey, you're on the air with Robert. Thanks for holding.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I want to know if you could see, as far as an astrology chart, about me and this guy named Andy.
You and this guy named Andy. Okay, you're obviously calling from Alameda County, is that right?
Yes.
And what's your name?
Tasha.
Okay, you and Andy. So what is it? So as I get to fire up the chart here, what is it about Andy that you like?
His charisma and very sociable and outspoken.
Okay, those are all good things. So so let's cut to the chase. You're attracted to Andy because of his power. You like his power, is that right?
Yeah. Okay,
so there we go. All right, give me your. Hold on a second. Let me go here. What's your birthday?
Mine is 6/22/75.
6/22/1975. Okay, so and what is Andy's birthday? Do you know Andy's birthday?
Yes, this is May 27, 1985.
Okay, so he's a Gemini, May 27th, 1985, and you're 6/22.
75.
6/22/75. So 6/22. Let me look at you. Okay, so 6/22/75. All right, I'm going to have to open another window and look at his chart.
Okay.
You have Moon in Sagittarius. Do you know that?
Uh-huh.
So, if he's a Gemini and you've got Moon in Sagittarius and you've got Sun-Moon opposition, which creates a kind of a fatal attraction in some ways. When is his birthday again? I'm sorry?
May 27th, 1985.
Okay, May 27th, 1985. So he's a lot younger. He's, 10 years younger than you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm starting to get a vibe for this relationship now. Hold on. May 27th, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, there he is. He's a Gemini. Looks like he's got Moon in Virgo, Mercury in Taurus, Venus in Aries, Mars in Gemini. All right, so let me just go back to you. Where did you go? Okay. Let's see. I lost you there for a second. Because, okay. So, all right, here's what I see. He's got Mars in Gemini. You've got Moon in Gemini. He has Moon in Leo, and you have what? You've got something in Leo too. Hold on. What do you got in Leo? And you've got Venus in Leo. Okay, so you got the Moon-Venus connection, Mars-Moon connection. The one thing I'm going to say about him is that he has not gone through his Saturn return. Are you looking at this as a serious relationship? Like, do you want to commit to this guy and be with him? Or do you want, okay. So here's the deal. He's not gone through his Saturn return yet. And he's got Saturn in Scorpio. And people that have Saturn in Scorpio, their Saturn return is about learning how to deal with personal power and issues around sexuality and issues around, finding their own light in the darkness. And people that have Saturn in Scorpio, especially the ones that have Saturn close to their natal Pluto, he's got Pluto in Scorpio as well, but Saturn is like, it's not conjunct. People that have early Saturn in Scorpio, like at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 degrees, as long as it's conjunct with Pluto, they can get through their Saturn returns in some ways faster than other people because of the intensity of Pluto. And what they'll do is they'll go through maybe 2 or 3 really major events in their lives. It could be the loss of somebody. It could be getting really sick and having to recover from that sickness. It could be getting into a very intense relationship with somebody that is explosive and dynamic and really pushes their boundaries psychologically and physically. So they could accelerate their Saturn returns quicker. But he's not one of them, because Saturn for him is at the far end of Scorpio. So he's going to go through his Saturn return, but it's really not going to be the major point for Saturn for him won't be maybe a year and a half into his Saturn return. And my advice for people, like for instance, when you look at the royal family and the royal wedding, these people, in terms of aristocracy, nobility, royalty, they've been playing with astrology for literally thousands of years, and they're hip to this. And they did not throw that royal wedding out there arbitrarily at that time. They looked at the royal wedding because at that point Saturn had finally crossed over William's natal Saturn for the last time. He had gone through his Saturn return, and Kate was right in the middle of hers. And so what they had done is they had chosen that wedding because they knew that there was a better chance for that marriage to succeed esoterically if he had been through his Saturn return, and he was. Your guy has not even gone through his Saturn return yet. He's got a lot of runway left in terms of him understanding Saturn in his life. And for men, maybe even more so than women, it's really important for them to be able to go through their Saturn return and use it as a rite of passage, because it's the final gateway between adolescence and adulthood. Now, if you want my unadulterated opinion on this, I would say that you could experience him at a level where it can be interesting, it can be fun, it could be sexual, it could be dynamic. You have a connection with him, with Moon, Mars, stuff like that. But I would hold off on my expectations of this being a relationship that you can bank on for the long term until he goes through his Saturn return. That's my advice to you. And you've got 10 years on him already. And I'm not saying that that 10 years would be could keep you from finding somebody that would be interesting and loving and important to your life. But you're in a different place. You know, and women in a lot of ways are just more advanced than men on an emotional level, especially a male that has not gone through his Saturn return yet. So I would say, hey, you know, this is okay to experience. This is okay to play with. This is okay to have as a learning relationship. But I would definitely keep this in the back of my mind that he's got some major ground to cover with that Saturn return.
So what age? So when do you see him going through his Saturn return?
A good 1.5 to 2 years before he gets through the backside of his Saturn return.
Okay, so within a 2-year stretch.
2 years. 2 years. He's got seasoning. He's got seasoning.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question? Is he African American?
Yeah, he is.
Okay. So the African American male needs to go through the Saturn return and needs to get to a level of integration in some ways more than other males. And there's a reason for this, because the Saturn return it's a point of power. And for the African American male to fully enter into a relationship with a woman, he's got to be like really on his game and be able to deal with his power in a way that is incredibly respectful and is really commensurate with his own ability to meet somebody. It's important. It's really important for them to go through their Saturn return. It's important for everybody to go through their Saturn return, but it's a rite of passage. And unfortunately, and the statistics will bear this out, most African American males do not have fathers to help them get through these rites of passage in their lives. Like, look, you know, I know it's mundane, but even stuff like, you know, doing Little League or playing catch, or, you know, there are these really key moments in a young man's life. And I don't know what his history is, and I don't want to say, you know, I don't want to make any broad generalizations that he doesn't have a male figure in his life or hasn't had one. But statistically, most African American males don't. So the Saturn return is so doubly important because it's manhood. It's the final gateway to manhood. And if you want somebody to be with you, you want them to be a man, right? Because you're a woman and you're 10 years ahead of him. So the Saturn return is really important for him to be able to somehow understand not just his ability to be a male, but it's Scorpio. It's about power. It's about wielding that power in a way that is really responsible. You don't want to get involved with somebody who, while they're exploring their Saturn return, starts fucking around on you. Okay? You don't want that. And part of the Saturn return in Scorpio is about committing to using that power in a very responsible fashion.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So if I wait for two years out, will it work?
It could. I mean, look, if you have a connection with this guy and you love him and you have an investment in him, you know, do it consciously. You know, I mean, I don't know if you've been sexual with him or not. Once you bond with somebody sexually, it's a whole different ballgame. It's harder to pull back. You know, now you're in. You know, and the decision-making process after you've experienced something sexually becomes really clouded. So, you know, I don't know where you are with that relationship, but just know that he's got a lot of runway to experience and understand, you know, who he is on a masculine level, and to be able to stand in power with a woman, you know, face to face, and do that responsibly. He's got to go through that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Well, look, best of luck to you, and I hope that you can, you know, navigate that with some accountability and some clarity. Okay?
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye. You know, it's so important for for us to understand the Saturn return. And, when I was young and I was going through my Saturn return, astrology was very different. Astrology was, incredibly fatalistic when I was going through my Saturn return. And I thought my Saturn return was all about doom and gloom. Oh, Saturn. Oh, you haven't gone through your Saturn return. Just wait. Oh, your life's going to be terrible. It's going to fall apart. I was literally quaking by the time my Saturn return rolled around because so many people had told me about how, Fate said, hey, look, man, your Saturn return is a way for you to really grow and to really get into yourself and to really maximize your gifts and skills and abilities and to focus on things that mattered. I would have been like, okay, great, yeah, bring it on. But, that wasn't the case at all. And I'm going to be honest with you, I did not execute my Saturn return skillfully. I didn't. By the time I got through it, at the end of it, it was not bad. And some good things came out of it. But I spent my Saturn return in a very dark place, literally and figuratively. In the state of Washington, in the city of Seattle, the heart of my Saturn return was a winter in Seattle. And let me tell you, it was not a fun place to be. But I got through it. All right, let's go to our next caller. Good morning. You're on the air with Robert. Thanks for holding.
Hi, it's Holly. Hi, it's Holly from Seattle.
Hey, isn't that interesting?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So how long have you lived in Seattle?
Oh, too long. I don't know, 20 years on and off.
What's your name?
Holly.
Holly. So you're the one that's got the guy that is not like treating you with as much
Yes.
enlightened awareness as he possibly can.
Okay, Gigi, I'm on the phone. Yes. Yes, no, our divorce will be final on July 16th.
So you did it, huh?
Yeah. And he's giving me his biological kids, 3 of them.
How do you feel about that?
I want the kids.
So you're getting everything you want out of this?
Yeah, his kids.
And your freedom?
Yeah. I don't know. You know how that goes.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag because there are things you're getting. I mean, look, even sometimes the most despicable people we've ever been involved with, there's like at least 1 or 2 things that we miss about them.
Yeah.
Raymond Carver.
No, I don't miss him yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there will be. There's, we're human, right? There's always that 1 or 2 things that we cord with and we attach to emotionally. They still kind of like hang around a little bit,
Yeah.
So, well, look, can I congratulate you on getting out of this marriage?
Yeah. Finally
right.
did it.
Everybody, let's just give Holly a round of applause. Way to go. All right, so you're single. You're going to be single.
Yeah.
So any enlightened male in Seattle, Holly's back on the market. There we go.
Ah!
So you're going to take your time, though, right? I mean, you're going to take your time. You're not going to like rush into somebody's arms, or has that happened already?
No, nothing like that. No, yeah, I have kids. I have to worry,
All right, so are you going to be able to, because you were staying at home, are you going to be able to do that or not?
I don't know. Maybe that'll be my question. Because, I'm in between jobs and homes right now. I'm staying with my mommy.
Yeah.
So, I've been an apartment manager for 10 plus years, and I'm so sick of it, but it gets me a free apartment.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what else to do or what other way to go.
Well, I think I was an apartment manager as well. I did it in Oakland for 3 years, almost 4 years. And there's some, there are upsides and downsides. The upsides are, hey, you get a break on rent.
Yeah.
The downside is that, you're everybody's, wet nurse, and you've got to be on call all the time. And if you run a good ship and you get good tenants, it's less of an issue. But if you've got some problem tenants, then it really impacts your life.
Yeah.
So let's do this. Let's get into your chart. And I'm going to do your chart because this is a special day, a special time, and you deserve a full chart. How's that sound?
Oh, sounds nice. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay. So let me go. Let's see. Where are we going? Going. We're going to go. How about let's go here. Okay, I got this guy doubled up twice. All right. There we go. All right. So Polly and
With an H.
Yep. Okay. When is your birthday again?
10/25/64. I'm old school.
5. Okay. So October 25th, 1964. Okay. So you are a dragon.
Yep.
It is your year. Well, when's your birthday? I mean, your time, brother. Your birth time.
Time is 1:43 p.m.
That's when you were born, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. And where did that magic moment take place?
Westchester, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Westchester, Pennsylvania. I'm almost there. Hold on. Oops. Westchester, Pennsylvania. Let's see. It's not showing up. What's the nearest big city?
Philadelphia?
All right, let's do that. It's easy. Philadelphia, PA. All right. Okay, so here we go. Looking at your chart. At 25th of October, 1964, 1:43 p.m., Philadelphia, PA. Let's see what we got going on here. Looks to me like the big player for you is going to be Saturn. And, Saturn's been going through your 8th house for the past 2 years, and it doesn't surprise me because the 8th house is the house of sex and death and transformation and legacies, contracts. Contracts are a very big part of the 8th house. So, when we enter into contracts with people or things, we think that the piece of paper is the contract. Usually the contract that we have or experience happens even before we sign that piece of paper. That's just a manifestation of the contract we've entered into, either on a psychological or an emotional or a spiritual level. Just as we decide to dissolve a contract, as well as enter into one, that dissolution has already taken place.
Oh, yeah. Always like that.
Now, on a deep inner level, Libra, balance, you're severing a contract. Well, the good news is that in October, Saturn moves into Scorpio, and it moves out of your 8th house. And for you, that's almost like coming out of a cave, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So before it comes out of that cave, it conjuncts your sun. So you're going to have a Saturn-Sun conjunction in October, which is really important. It's about remembering who you are. That's what's going to happen. You're going to go, oh yeah, this is who I was. This is who I was before I got into this marriage. It's about reclaiming, vital parts of yourself, parts that you've given away.
Yeah.
It's a real powerful moment of integration. And at the same time, Saturn will also be trining your natal moon in the 5th house, which is children, progeny, and your own feminine sensibilities, your own feminine power. Moon in Cancer is really powerful. The moon is exalted in Cancer, and you've got moon sun trine in your chart, which is great. It's real. It's terrific. So now Saturn's going to be trining your moon. It's about reclaiming this femininity. It's about reclaiming lots of things, being a mother, being a woman. This is a tremendous transit for you. You know, Saturn then, you know, moves up and it moves into your 9th house and it conjuncts Mercury. And the Saturn-Mercury conjunction trining your natal moon is about the reclamation of wisdom. You know, one of the things that you're going to be tapping into, Holly, is how to live in the world strategically. You know, there's going to be a layer of strategic understanding and awakening that's going to be happening for you at a really high level because your Mercury's in the 9th house. So we're talking about not only the activation of strategy and learning how to live with your wiles, but we're also talking about wisdom. You know, this is a really high moment for you in terms of, you know, reclaiming your own wisdom. You know, being able to see into things really clearly and to make objective plans. It's a really good time to make plans because you're going to have so much clarity, you know, in your life at that time. This is a, you know, super, super powerful transit. Right now, you've got Jupiter really on your natal Taurus. You've got Jupiter and Taurus in your 3rd house, and Jupiter's right there right now. So this whole, you know, divorce thing in the papers couldn't be more timely.
Oh. What about, is he going to let me adopt the kids? That was, you know what I mean?
I don't know about that. You know, here's what I would do, though. If you were going to make some kind of a move towards that end, I would certainly wait until that Saturn conjunction.
Oh, okay.
Because the 9th house, you know, the 9th house is the house of law. So
wait till October?
Yeah, I would wait until that Saturn conjunction in October. Because again, you know, where's your moon? It's in the 5th house, house of children, house of creativity, house of procreation, right? So I would wait until October. That would be the most ideal time astrologically to make that kind of a move.
Okay.
Because I think the stars and quote-unquote the law would be on your side. What happens during that time? Well, another thing takes place. That Saturn is a trigger for a grand trine that takes place in your chart. And that trine is with your sun, your moon, and your Saturn, which is at the far end of Aquarius, almost at Pisces, the 28 degrees Aquarius. So it's participating in this trine. And that Saturn will trigger that grand trine. It's like you couldn't have any greater access to the most powerful point in your chart. Now, what's really interesting, though, is that Saturn also is part of a T-square with Jupiter in Taurus and Mars in Leo. And in fact, it's almost, not quite, it's almost like a cross, a fixed cross. The only thing that it doesn't do is it does not square Neptune, which is in Scorpio, which would have made it a legitimate fixed cross.
Oh.
So you've got a really complex chart, but I do think that with Jupiter on your moon, on your Jupiter right now, that this is a really propitious time. And, you know, it's squaring Mars and Leo. Leo, again, being, you know, children. It's opening up, you know, the gateway, the doorway for something like this to take place. By the time October rolls around, Pluto will be getting closer and closer to trining your natal Uranus in your chart. And the Pluto-Uranus trine will only get stronger as you move into 2012 and 2013, which will allow you to completely remake your life. And that sets you up for the Pluto-Pluto trine, the Pluto-Venus trine, way down the line. You know, the stars are in your favor, and you're really headed in a very positive direction, extremely positive direction. Yeah. And you're going to get the benefit really early on of the Jupiter Jupiter's, hold on a second, where's this? Well, it'll actually be a little bit later, but it's going to be the Jupiter-Saturn trine. But Jupiter's going to be moving, into Gemini. And for you, that's going to be taking place in the fourth house, which is the house of home. And moving would be very good for you. Expanding.
What month is that?
Well, Jupiter moves into Gemini, I believe, in June. And for you, though, it's really going to be, anytime in 2012, it's going to be a really good place for you. It's a good time for you to move. So look around locally, and what you want to do is you want to upgrade, you want to expand, and you want to get more rooms and more space. And you can do that. Yeah. And, Jupiter, since you're living with your mom, with Jupiter in the fourth house, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Uh-huh.
One of the things you may want to think about is, hey, Mom, what if we moved together and got a much bigger place together? Just put that out.
She's trying to get married and move with some man.
Okay. Well, maybe it could be a duplex.
Yeah. I've always thought that we should have a duplex because she's getting older,
Well, think about that because it is Gemini, right? So what you're talking about is you're talking about structures that are connected. If you look at the sign of Gemini, I mean, it's really, the architectural manifestation of Gemini would be a duplex. So, say, hey, Mom, let's get a duplex. You live on one side. You got your space with your guy. I got my life on the other side. If anything happens to you, I'm nearby. You can have contact with these kids. We pay less.
Yeah.
It's a win-win for everybody. Everybody's got their space. You got yours. I got mine. So play with the idea of a duplex.
Yeah, I've always thought that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Holly. Well, congratulations. And call back, keep us informed, and let us know how your new life is going.
Okay. Have a good day.
All right. Take
Thank
good
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay. That's interesting, huh? Let's go to this Skype line. Let's see who's there and what they want to talk about. Hey, you're on the air with Robert. Hello.
Hi, Robert. It's Georgette. How are you?
Hey, Georgette. I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Okay, I think.
Good.
I wondered if you could take a look at my chart, and I've got some interesting things going on, and yesterday being a very, felt like a turning point for me.
Yeah.
Career-wise, something went on in my business, not my business, but the business I work with, and it's feeling very tenuous right now.
Okay. When is your birthday?
July 17th, 1958.
And where are you calling from on that Skype line?
California.
Okay.
I should be in your system. And
I just saw your name pop up, but your chart is not here. It's just your name. When's your birth time?
10:19 a.m.
And where were you born?
Brooklyn, New York.
Okay. Okay, there we go. All right, there's your chart in all of its glory. Okay, so let's see what we got going on here. Career. Okay.
And I had station right on my Venus.
What's that?
Venus stationed retrograde right on my Venus.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Yeah, and that's and that is in your 10th house.
Yeah.
And it's opposite Saturn.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, guess what? I mean, you get to reevaluate your relationships as they relate to your work life, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
whenever you get into a Venus-Saturn opposition, one of the things that if your life is impacted during a Venus-Saturn opposition, one of the things that I would tell people would be to not draw conclusions too quickly. Because the Saturn opposition takes a little bit of patience to integrate. If there's a Saturn conjunction, or there's even to some degree a Saturn square, I think you can move on the information a lot quicker. With the Saturn opposition, I believe that you have to sit back a little bit and allow more information, both from an empirical level, which would be, data, facts, memos, conversations, and also from an internal level. Oppositions are some of the hardest angles to integrate internally, because theoretically what happens is we get pulled apart in our decision-making process. We get torn. We can see both sides of the issue. And it's hard for us to weigh in and say, well, this is really what's happening. And, what I try to do with oppositions is to take them out of the two-dimensional realm and to turn them into loops versus these static angles. And what you can do is you can begin to run the tapes a little bit more, and try to cognate the information. It's almost like high-speed processing on a computer, and gather more data and more data and more data and more data without really making a decision. It's more like bringing it in, cataloging it, processing it from an objective level. And objectivity is important for you because you do have that Venus in Gemini. And Venus in Gemini is really about, interacting with relationships objectively, because what we want to do, or what Gemini wants to do, is to split relationships up, to split it into their variant parts, and to look at it and say, well, there's this and 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 this. And when you've got that Gemini stationary or hitting your natal Venus, rather, I think you just need a little more time. And you need to buy yourself a little more time with whatever's taking place. You've also got Saturn right on your true node, right? You know that. It's right there right now. Mm-hmm. And it's in your second house. And, what you want to be able to do theoretically, what Libra always wants to do is to find win-win for people, And what I would ask you to do is to be objective and to figure out, what the win-win is going to be without completely surrendering your position. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times Libra will just inadvertently surrender their position in order to find the win-win. Libra will often say, well, I'll do this because this is the outcome that I want to have to take place. Mm-hmm. And that's fine, but not everybody is going to be on board with that outcome. And sometimes people will say, hey, thanks for doing that. I get the outcome that I want. And Libra will often sacrifice its own position for a win-win. So I guess, what I'm sharing with you right now is to try to maintain an objective place where you can gather more information. And you can have a little bit more patience, with what's happened in the workplace.
Are you suggesting or are you advising that I compromise my position just for the benefit of the whole, or just to make peace, or compromise?
I'm suggesting that you don't have all the information yet, and to hang out a little bit longer with where you are, even if it may be an uncomfortable place. I don't know anything about what's happened, but I do know that when Saturn is there, and you're dealing with Saturn on your true node, which is, it's an important place because these are, the second house is all about values,
Right.
And, it's challenging for you because you've got Mars in your 8th house opposing Saturn. And there's this, when you've got the Mars-Saturn opposition, it's one of the hardest oppositions that you can go through because Mars just wants to act, right?
Yep. Right.
And you just want to say, fuck it, let's get this done and take a big machete out and start cutting people out of your life and cutting situations out of your life. And Mars in the 8th house is really, especially when Saturn is opposing it, can be very restless. So you're also dealing with a sense of restlessness with this, like feeling like you've got to make a choice, you've got to make a decision. And I know from my experience that if we can just buy ourselves a little bit more time, that we can begin to evolve solutions that we can't see immediately because we feel like we're being hammered by our immediate experience.
When do you see that lifting? When would you suggest that would be over?
You've got Saturn moving off of your natal Saturn. It's Saturn's still retrograde. It's got to move forward. But, I would say once Saturn moves forward, which is in June, you might be able to get some relief on that, okay? In a long-standing way. Look, it's going to be 28 years before Saturn hits your true node again. This is a very significant transit for you. This is kind of a life-changing, pivotal transit. Now, you could move on information before Saturn moves forward. I'm going to give you an analogy that has served me well, and it's a sports analogy, and it's a football analogy. The best quarterbacks are the ones that can hang in the pocket the longest, and with the pocket collapsing around them, find a solution or an option in the field that will open up at the last moment. Okay. And they're able to do that because they don't panic. They know that if they can just hold in there, hang in there for a little bit longer, they might be able to make something happen. And then guess what? If they don't, they throw the ball away and they get another play. And they know that, right? So my advice to you would be just to hang in there a little bit longer, take some of the pressure off of you needing to make a decision today. Or tomorrow, or even after the. I would wait personally till this eclipse goes through, because the eclipse is going to be taking place, in your 9th house, and it's going to be, so the sun and the moon will be at about the moon when the eclipse is really, humming, is going to be very close to your midheaven. And I personally would wait until the moon in Gemini at least passes over your Venus, which would be until Tuesday. So I would not do anything until the eclipse happens, until it clears, and the moon gets into Cancer. Okay? Does that make sense to you?
Definitely. And with this situation, it definitely makes sense. But I also have another news situation coming up this weekend that I'm looking forward to. And I wonder, since the timing, it ends on Sunday night, since the timing is just as the eclipse has happened, and moving forward, like you say, into Tuesday, I wonder if any new developments will be coming out of that for me, new opportunities.
Well, one of the things that's going to take place with the eclipse is it's going to square your Pluto in Virgo. And because you've got Pluto at 0 degrees Virgo in the 12th house. And it's a very powerful placement for Virgo and Pluto. It's at 0 degrees. It's the most powerful placement for Pluto that there is. And that moon is going to square, the sun is going to square your Pluto. And what I think can take place for you at that time would be a profound opening on an inner level. We're talking soul level, okay? Because the sun is going to be up in your 9th house. And the 9th house is religion, philosophy, law. People say it's expansion of consciousness. Consciousness cannot be expanded. It is the awareness of an expanded consciousness. That's where the sun is going to be. It is going to be pushing you to have a greater awareness of things in your life, of all the elements in your life. You know, the ninth house is the catbird seat of the zodiac. It's got the highest perspective. You can look down on your life from the ninth house. It, you know, in religious terms or in Christian terms, it's the upper room. It's where Jesus goes to theoretically, you know, meet God or the Holy Spirit. That's the ninth house. And what's happening for you during the eclipse is it's squaring Pluto, and the 12th house is the house of God. And Pluto is at 0 degrees a portal to your soul. So whatever you're doing this weekend, okay, open yourself up in a very safe way, but in a way where you can take in as much information on as many levels as possible. Whatever happens for you this weekend could be life-changing in a very profound way. And you may wind up having to integrate some of that information after this weekend, which is probably why you want to wait a little bit before you make any other moves in terms of your career, your life path, and all that stuff.
I see. Okay. But no immediate changes in the career as you see that. I would wait just a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that you can't change your career. I'm offering you at least until after the eclipse, right? Where you have much more information. And I hear you. I think I'm more asking about, like, does my chart really point to that? Yes, because I'll tell you why. Because whatever it is that you have to do, number one, you've got to have a strategic relationship that you do it with, because that's Libra. If you're going to make a change in your career, you can't do it alone. Right. All right. If you're going to strike out on your own, or you're going to change jobs or change careers, you have got to have a strategic partner to do that with. Right. It's essential. All right. So factor that into your change. Okay. Okay. That's somebody that you got to, because your true note is in Libra. You can't necessarily act alone. Now, with Mars in Gemini, Mars in Aries in the 8th house, you could be the driver for that. You could be the person that could suggest that. You know, you could say, "Hey, let's you and I strike out and do something together." Right. That is definitely in your best interest, because if you've got that yod with Mars and Aries, so on a deep level, you could be the motivating force. You could be the driving force. But it's important for you to be able to have that partnership and not do it alone. Absolutely. That's exactly how I feel, and that's exactly what I've started to put into motion. Good. Okay. All right. Did we arrive at some level of clarity? Yes. Thank you so much. Absolutely. I'm very thankful and grateful to you. Thank you. Okay, Georgette. Have a great weekend, okay? You too. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Hello?
Yeah, hey, I'm just trying to, you there? Hi.
Yeah, I'm there. Robert?
Yeah, hey, how's it going?
This is Ken from Ransomville. Good. I'm checking in. I really like what you're doing with your occult or esoteric interpretation with Freemasonry, the Lucis Trust. I was wondering, what is the astrological action of the star Sirius on a person's chart? Have you got any sense of what's up with Sirius?
Yeah, I am not really a fixed star guy. Okay. Although I will, Rob Tillett is a big fixed star guy, and my friend Twilight is a fixed star person. Although I do know a little bit about, which fixed stars theoretically are important to the quote-unquote elite or the esoteric elite. And if we're talking about Freemasonry or Lucis Trust, Sirius is not one of them.
Well, what about what is the White Lodge on Sirius that Foster Bailey refers to?
Yeah, I think that there's if we're talking about like DK or Dwalkule, I think probably what they're referring to is a hierarchical relationship to the White Lodge through Sirius, and that's probably theoretically that is probably where Dwal Kul is transmitting from. That's my sense with with that relationship. When I've looked at certain things, in terms of, like, for instance, I was playing with fixed stars with somebody that goes to my website fairly frequently. I don't think he goes there anymore, but we were looking at where the Bilderberg meetings were being held around the world, and we looked back on where the fixed stars were during those meetings, and almost to a T, the constellation Boots was right above those meetings. And in Boots, I believe, is Arcturus.
Are you?
Go ahead.
Are you following the North Pole of the ecliptic and the shift in 2050 from Little Bear to the cosmic Ethiopian king, and how that's playing out in kind of the Afrocentric narratives of identity, and kind of the critique of the self, and the role of melanin and the pineal gland?
Well, it's really interesting because I have not been following that, but the whole role of melanin in the pineal gland is absolutely fascinating, and one of the I think one of the great music books of the 20th century is a book by a guy by the name of Kojo Eshin, and he writes in a style which he calls pop fiction, and it really is kind of this really multi-dimensional language. It's absolutely fascinating, and the book is about black artists that have kind of a cosmic perspective or a cosmic relationship with music. And he gets into Funkadelic, he gets into Sun Ra, he gets into the Detroit techno scene with Derek May and Carl Craig and all these guys, DJ Spooky. And he talks about melanin, and he talks about how melanin is it is a rhythmic essence, and that there is a rhythmic relationship to the amount of melanin in somebody's skin, and it's absolutely fascinating. And we can see this shift taking place with a more Afrocentric relationship with consciousness. I can totally see it. And, and in fact, one of the things that I've been doing on Facebook is I've been bonding with kind of this more Black American mystical tradition that really goes back to Egypt and Kemet and stuff like that. I find myself being drawn to that more than some of the more sort of esoteric White Lodge stuff. I mean, it's really the thing that's fascinating to me is the narrative of the Dogon, right? You're hip to that, right? And I mean, now the question becomes, how much of that is really legitimate? How much of that is really a superimposition of perhaps a Masonic identity myth that's tied to this? Because when you get into Arthur M. Young and Theosophy and kind of that whole interface, it's fascinating. But nonetheless, what really actually your post on the Trayvon Martin situation got me kind of interested in exploring this relationship of the rise of the cosmic Ethiopian king, which this guy, Dr. Charles Finch, who used to be at Morehouse College, has kind of taken on as a part of this, kind of great shift, where we're not only going to have the zodiacal year shifting to Aquarius, but we're also having this precession of the pole stars, which is going to shift from Little Bear, or the Jackal in the Dogon narrative, to the cosmic Ethiopian king. So the rise of Barack Obama would be, he reads that as kind of indicative of the starry action or the influx that's kind of preparing us for this. And then, in kind of the more esoteric readings,
you have the sun man and the ice man, and the white man whose calcified pineal gland doesn't have the necessary melanin to kind of reach these kind of spiritual heights, are part of some of these more popularized Afrocentric identity myths.
Right.
But it's really it's fascinating. I mean, your laying out of the Trayvon Martin thing and kind of looking at this rise of the cosmic Ethiopian king and just kind of looking at that kind of starry juice playing into the narratives really kind of got me, my interest kind of peaked, and so that was
it's an interesting narrative for sure. And many years ago, this is really an interesting. The timing around it is kind of fascinating because it was happening right around the time of a lunar eclipse, I believe, and it was in 1998. And I was with this woman at the time, and we were lovers, and we were both very much into kind of a very esoteric and archetypal dimension to our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And she wanted to take ecstasy with me, and I was like, yeah, okay, well let's do this, and I'd done E before and had some pretty profound experiences on it, by the way, and they'd all been really uplifting and really into melting boundaries and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd actually experienced some very quote unquote visionary and prophetic stuff on E. So I said, okay, well let's do this. She said, well, let's prepare for it. Let's fast for a day. Let's do a sauna, and then let's do it. So okay, we'll prepare the room. We'll prepare the space. So we did that, and I took her out to this place right on the coast here in California, and it was a very special place for me, a private place where I used to go to all the time. It's an outcropping of rocks that really hits the Pacific Ocean in a very dynamic way. And so we went there, we hung out there, and, we're coming on to the E, and all of a sudden, I dropped into this place that I'd never gone to before, and it was not one of the warm and fuzzy, feel-good places. It was a pretty intense and kind of dark place. And I wound up shutting my eyes and dropping into this vision space, and I started to see things that they were kind of blowing my mind. And what I saw was the physical emergence of reptilian consciousness. And it was not pretty, it was not cool, and it was really, pretty savage, actually. What are we talking about? We're talking about the physical manifestation of reptilian gods. And what I saw was, and this was the fascinating piece, was that the black race were not beholden to this kind of reptilian trance that would be broadcast out to the planet. And in fact, there was open warfare with the reptilian race. And it was the black race that took on the reptilians because they were not paralyzed by whatever sort of transmission that was taking place. And they were actually able to defeat this reptilian contingency, and the planet was literally being saved by the black race because of this. I saw this in my vision, and it was pretty profound, to be honest with you. And I'll tell you another thing about this, which kind of really sealed this for me, was that I actually saw, again, this was 1998, I saw that there was a suitcase dirty bomb that was going to Washington during that time. And I told my friend this, and I didn't know where that was coming from. And a couple days later, it was actually a couple weeks later, I was driving around. It was late at night. I was in my car, and I was listening to Art Bell. And Art was on the air at that time. And there was a piece of news that had come through ABC News, and two men had been pulled over at the U.S.-Canadian border. And they were pulled over, and they had a suitcase with explosives in the suitcase. And it was just, and I thought to myself at that time, I heard Washington, and I thought it was Washington, D.C. in my vision. Turned out it was Washington State.
Washington State.
Yeah, and it was 2 weeks after I'd had this vision that this happened, right? So if there's any legitimacy to that, then I think there's a legitimacy to what I saw with this black consciousness that was not susceptible to the trance.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, I mean the story with the calcification of the pineal gland, which is really the capacity also to convert to DHT, right? I mean,
right.
it's a vision. It's kind of like the vision. It's visionary capacity.
Yeah.
And fluoride, presumably, is one of these calcifying pineal gland substances.
That's right.
That we're getting in our water. So, all right. Well, I don't want to tie up too much more of your time, but it's been a good wrap, and love your show, love your posts, man. Keep up the great work.
Thank you very much. Thanks for chiming in.
Take care. Bye-bye.
That was a brilliant, absolutely brilliant call. And, he's absolutely right. Some interesting stuff going on with that. If there's this one guy who writes a blog called Hollywood Illuminati Revealed or Insider.com, Nicholas Duplessis. He's got some interesting stuff around this. One of the things that we're talking about too here is, there is something happening, racially, in the world and on the planet. Part of it is this shift that we talked about during the call, and I believe that is a natural progression. I also believe that there is on the other hand, there's an artificial progression to accelerate this process and to obliterate, quote unquote, the white race, and that is happening. And I'm not being racist about this, but the racial memory is being tampered with of the quote unquote white race. It's happening, and I talked about the shift between AD and BC and time earlier, going to CE and BCE. We can look at it in terms of what's happening with the media. How is the white male portrayed? The white male is portrayed as being a bumbling fool. A bumbling fool. Now, if you look at how males from other cultures or other races are portrayed, they're portrayed with a far greater degree of respect. Now, I believe that all races are equal and all races have something very important to offer to the evolution of the planet. I also believe that races come from different planets. That's me. But I'm not a root race guy, and I'm not putting, the Aryan race above any other race, because that's the theosophical, dictum. That's not what I'm about. But I can definitely see that there's a huge marginalization of what's taking place with the white race. It's just the way it is. And it's been happening for a while. Now, if you get into conspiratorial circles, right, you get into the really dark corners of conspiracy, there are going to be people that say, well, who's in charge of that? Why is that taking place? Who hates the white race? Is it black people? Is it the black race? Doubtful. I don't think that's the case. I'll say this. I have found, I used to live in Oakland, California. And I managed an apartment building in Oakland, California. And I would walk up and down the streets of Oakland, California. And to a man, I could look a black male in the eye, and he would not turn his glance away, and he would always greet me. Always. Always. And when I moved out of there, I moved to Marin County, and I never met or encountered such a scared bunch of people in my life. Absolutely scared, utterly terrified. Wouldn't even look me in the eye, let alone greet me. I kind of missed Oakland when that happened, to be honest with you. These people didn't have a lot, but they could, they could reach down and at least greet me, with the essence of their being. Anyway, I'm ranting a bit. But in the dark conspiratorial circles, theoretically, it's the quote-unquote Babylonian high priests that want to eliminate and eradicate the white race. And I'll let you fill in the blanks there. But we've all got something to offer. Just like every sign on the wheel, the zodiac has something to offer. Every single race and culture has something to offer. And theoretically, that is what the age of Aquarius, in its most auspicious and enlightened and expansive aspects, is able to bring to the table. Okay, it is 11:20. You're listening to Navigating the Astrological Matrix. I'm Robert Phoenix, and it's been a really enlightening show, so to speak. Okay, let me read to you a little bit about the total solar eclipse. This is about. This is from BibleX.org. Okay, it's an interesting post here, and I'm going to read a little bit. And this is a history of the solar eclipses. It says here, solar eclipses have been observed throughout history. Ancient eclipse records made in China and Babylonia are believed to be over 4,000 years ago. Recent research has demonstrated that solar eclipses had been depicted in the fascinating mythology of ancient Egypt and produced evidence that the ancient Egyptians observed solar eclipses over 4,500 years ago. In ancient China, the solar and lunar eclipses were regarded as heavenly signs that foretell the future of the emperor. Predicting eclipses were of high importance for the state. Yes, for the state. They did not predict eclipses for the masses, okay? Over 4 millenniums ago, 2 Chinese astrologers were murdered as they failed to predict a solar eclipse. You see, this is why information, cosmic and celestial information, is incredibly important to the powers that be, because they understand that there are forces that are moving. They're moving us at a genetic level, at a DNA level, at a cellular level. This is what happens when these things move and shift in the gears of the cosmos. Change and grind. The ancient Chinese believed that solar eclipses occur when a legendary celestial dragon devours the sun. They also believe that this dragon attacks the moon during lunar eclipses. In the Chinese language, the term for eclipse was chihi, which also means to eat. One ancient Chinese solar eclipse record describes a solar eclipse as the sun has been eaten. It was a tradition in ancient China to bang drums and pots to make loud noises during eclipses to frighten the dragon away. Even more recently, in the 19th century, the Chinese Navy fired its cannons during a lunar eclipse to scare the dragon that was eating the moon. Astronomical computations enable astronomers to calculate the dates and paths of future and past eclipses with great accuracy. Some ancient eclipse records have been particularly significant to astronomers and historians, as they enabled certain historical eras and events to be dated accurately. Astronomers can also examine ancient eclipse records to measure the rate of the Earth's spin about its axis over the past millenniums. Astronomers in Mesopotamia, the plain between the 2 great rivers, Tigris and Euphrates, in the dawn of civilization, like the Chinese and Egyptian astronomers, the Babylonian astronomers observed the motions of the sun, moon, planets carefully and kept records of the celestial events. They are also credited with remarkable contributions to ancient astronomy. 3 famous solar eclipse records were made in Mesopotamia. One was that of the eclipse of 3 May 1375 BCE, which was visible in the city of Ugarit, located in the present Syrian Arab Republic. A total eclipse that turned day into night was found to be the eclipse of 31 July 1036 BCE, and an Assyrian record of the solar eclipse of 15 June 763 BCE was observed in the city of Nineveh. The ancient Greek astronomers have made outstanding contributions to astronomy, and their works remained influential till the Renaissance. Eratosthenes, 276-174 BCE, estimated the circumference of the Earth with remarkable accuracy by measuring the angles of the shadows cast at noon in Aswan and Alexandria on the day of the summer solstice. So you can see that eclipses have had a huge impact on ancient societies and ancient civilizations. The great British astronomer Sir Arthur Eddington, 1882 to 1944, traveled to the island of Principe near Africa to observe that eclipse. He sought to verify Einstein's conclusion that light is deflected in the gravitational fields of celestial objects. The gravitational field of a star, like the sun, acts as if it were a huge cosmic lens that refracts light. Eddington photographed the stars near the sun during the totality of the eclipse. According to the theory of relativity, the stars in the vicinity of the sun will appear slightly shifted from their original positions because of the deflection of their light due to the gravitational field of the sun. This effect can be observed from Earth only during the totality phase of a total solar eclipse, as the stars cannot be seen in broad daylight. Eddington's measurements confirmed Einstein's work and regarded as a conclusive proof that gravity bends light rays. From its orbit in space, the Hubble telescope has made incredible images of cosmic gravitational lenses in which massive galaxies bend the light of more distant objects thanks to Einstein and Eddington. So there you go. There's some information for you on how eclipses throughout history have been observed and charted by ancient civilizations. And again, this was information that the hierarchy or the dynastic ruling elite and royal families of these civilizations, they were the ones that wanted the information, mainly because they wanted to be able to govern and control as a result of that information. Information is key. And what we're doing now, the latest I would say, iteration of that kind of information or that kind of grabbing of information has to do with the internet. And it has to do with the information that's accrued while we're surfing, while we're clicking onto websites, while we're sending emails, while we're plugged into Facebook, while we go to YouTube, while we listen to a guy talking from 10 to noon on his radio show. This is the latest manifestation of accruing information. So it's gone from the celestial to the virtual, from the cosmic universe to the artificial universe. This is where the new information grab is taking place. Although that information, that accrual of information is very important. By the way, I did look up the fixed star that will be present over Chicago during the annular eclipse. And the fixed star that is present over Chicago during the NATO meeting at that time is Hercules. Hercules is right at the center of that eclipse. Now, Hercules, I believe, is related to Atlas, right? Hercules is a manifestation of Atlas. And what do Hercules and Atlas do? They are titans that hold up the world. Titans that hold up the world. So the absolute center of the universe at that time, during the eclipse, is the titan holding up the world, Hercules himself. So there you go. It's 11:30. I'm going to play a little bit of music, and the lines are open. If you want a reading, now is the time to get that reading done. It's a pre-eclipse reading. And, one of the things that I urge you, with this eclipse coming up is to prepare yourself for the eclipse. Okay? Prepare yourself. You know it's coming. You have the same information at hand that the kings and queens of antiquity do or did. Just keep that in mind. You have at your disposal the same information that royalty had. And they prepared themselves in their own unique way. So what are you doing to prepare for the eclipse? Are you taking a couple days to fast? Are you meditating? How are you preparing for this celestial event? Because I think it's important. I think it's vitally important. All right, so when we come back from the break, what I'll do is I'll open the lines again, And if you want me to look at where the eclipse is going to take place in your chart, I will do that. I thought it was really instructive for me to see that at 0 degrees, that eclipse would be squaring Georgette's Pluto. And that eclipse is going to be in her 9th house. So, you know, think of yourself as royalty. Think of me as your vizier for the next 30 minutes. And let's time travel, and I'll look at that eclipse for you. And I will consult to you how you can prepare for the upcoming eclipse. And I'm going to do that in 3 minutes. Right now, we're going to listen to Testing 1, 2, 3 by Michael Lee Hill. I'm going to drop into the chat room, and I'll be back for the last half hour of the show, where I will be your private vizier, serving you, my king, or you, my queen, in 3 minutes and 6 seconds. Hey, we're back. I was just hanging out in the chat room with some of the chatters, some of the chatterers. Big shout out to Paulo calling all the way from, well, he's not calling, he's in the chat room, all the way from Scotland. And then, of course, some of the beloved regulars and people who support the show and the site, Mustang Sally, Gemini Sun, Erica, a.k.a. the Mermuse, who is a talented graphic artist and singer who does help with the show and the site with images and keeping the shows and the posts up on YouTube, and totally grateful for that. So if you catch this show or any of the other shows on YouTube, you can thank Erica for being able to put those up there. So, and I do too. Thank you, Erica. It is 11:34, and the lines are open. We can talk about the eclipse, where it is in your chart, how it can help you, what you can learn from it, and what you might be able to expect from the eclipse. And be happy to get into that with you. Let's look at some birthdays today, see who might be celebrating their birthday. I always find birthdays fascinating because, invariably you'll find people that are born on the same day that make you go, isn't that interesting? Like the other day, it was the same birthday of John Wilkes Booth and Mark David Chapman. I found that to be fascinating. Okay, who do we have today? Well, let's see. Speaking of astrology, it's Jeff Jawler's birthday. Jeff is a pretty well-known astrologer. He and Rick Levine team up for a lot of stuff. They're extremely successful. If you wanted to look at somebody who was an icon for being a successful astrologer, would be Jeff Jawler. Let's see, who else? Muktananda, it's Muktananda's birthday, Swami Muktananda. Yet another guru scandalized near the end of his life for fucking around with his students. Let's see, who else? Deborah Winger. What man did not have at least a 30-second crush on Deborah Winger for a while? That's a sexy woman. Tori Spelling, not a sexy woman. Sorry. Let's see, Gabriella Sabatini, the tennis player, Adrienne Rich, the poet. Her birthday is today. Henry Fonda, the father of Jane and Peter Fonda, grandfather of Bridget Fonda. His birthday is today. Henry Fonda, a great socialist. Let's see who else. I always thought that Henry Fonda probably could have been one of those guys that could have run for president and won. Henry Fonda just looked presidential. I even said that to my dad when I was a kid. I said, hey, how come Henry Fonda doesn't run for president? I knew nothing about his politics. Billy Martin's birthday is today. And Billy Martin was one of my childhood heroes, believe it or not. He played second base for the Yankees. He managed the Oakland A's. And Billy Martin was kind of the first, he was kind of the first iteration of Pete Rose in some ways. He was a take no prisoners baseball player and played his ass off. And was an alcoholic too. He was tortured, absolutely tortured. I didn't know that as a kid. I found that out later, after I grew up. So, I'm not seeing any huge time twins today, but some interesting people for sure. We share this day as their birthday. Liberace, it's his birthday today. I once had a psychic tell me that Liberace was one of my spirit guides. I thought that was interesting, to have Liberace as a spirit guide. What a flamboyant spirit guide. Let's see what we got here. Okay. All right, it's 11:38, and if people aren't going to call in and do any readings, I'm probably going to shut this thing down. This is the great thing about doing this. I don't have any sponsors. Although I'd love to have some sponsors, to be honest with you. Having a sponsor would be great. And then I could stay on for 2 hours. We've got an incoming call. Paul, you can't call in. Paul, we've got somebody calling from Scotland. Let me see if I can do this here. Hold on. Hey, Paul. Hey, good. Hold on a second. So here's what you did. You dialed my Skype line, and I can't answer the Skype on my computer because I'm already on Skype with blogtalk. So here's what I'm going to do. I answered the call on my cell phone, and hold on a second. Now it says here that what happened here. Am I on? Let's see. I may have interrupted the show. Let me go into the chat room. Hold on. Let me see this, because I'm trying to work out how to talk to you and get you on the show at the same time. This could be interesting. Let's see here. Hold on. Yeah, let me put you on speaker. Hold on. All right, so we've got Paul calling in from Scotland. Good. Let me just see if I can get into the chat room and see if you are there. Okay. Let me just check the chat room. Can you hear me? Let's just see this. Hold on. I'm just checking the connection. Can you hear me? Testing. Okay, good. So they can hear us. So you're on the air, Paul. Thank you. Hello. I've got you up to my speaker now. All right. So you're calling from Scotland, right? And so give us the external weather and the internal weather from Scotland. What's going on in Scotland externally?
I'm calling from Aberdeen, and it's a nice evening. It's the sun's out. The raining for goodness knows it's just like weeks now, but nice evening.
And what's the weather internally? How are you doing?
Well, it was a big full moon for me, Robert, as you kind of know. But it's kind of I turned a few corners. Yeah, we can see that now.
Well, turning corners is always good. As long as they're not blind corners, if you know what I mean.
I've been separated now for almost a year. It's been a total trek.
It's using Skype, all the way around the world and going through like a small device like my phone can be a little challenging. I tell you, between the supermoon and this upcoming eclipse, I really see these two aspects of being massive points of acceleration for people in their lives. And a lot of times when we have massive acceleration, it can really push us and challenge us and make us go beyond what our perceived limitations are. And if there's anything that you could take solace in, Paul, is that you're not alone in this. Everybody is going through their own level of churn right now.
Yeah, it's kind of we chatted a lot about the kind of the internal kind of struggle and I suppose the way that you can all use different things like alcohol kind of to help us chill out this kind of period and making us more guidance in the next month of the garden, that whole kind of period for me. Being Pisces, it was quite easy to reach for the ball.
Yeah, you're in a culture. Yeah, and you're in a culture. Hey, Paul, we're starting to get a lot of interference on this line. I'm not sure what that's about. Can you hear me? Yeah, that's a lot better. So, look, you're in a culture and an environment, that supports, that supports drinking as a lifestyle choice, and that's challenging, because the milieu around you is really built and predicated on a form of social, sociability and relating that involves going out, having a few pints, if you don't do that and you break that, that social circle, it can be truly alienating and going through something, alone, really, and it's challenging as hell.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The kind of the social circle kind of for a lot of the UK, it does involve socializing with alcohol. And once you step away from that, it can be quite liberating, as you and I have always spoke about. But taking that step away, that kind of what you have to do in order to get that insight is to focus back into your life.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like, I'll be really candid. It's like, when you go out, when a guy, because I'm a guy, I can't necessarily speak for women, but as a guy, if you go out and you drink, there's probably a better probability that you're going to meet a woman, in a bar that's also drinking, and the chances of you bonding emotionally are greater on some level because your defenses are down and your inhibitions are down. So it's also a way to like meet members of the opposite sex. And when you go into a bar and you're not drinking, and you've got other people that are drinking, the same kind of access point emotionally is just not there.
Yeah, I completely get you, Robert. I completely get you. I kind of go to one of music clubs, and the kind of even the women, you meet there. There's still a drinking culture. So the kind of women you are going to meet, there is that element of, on the bar and watching music and consuming, the odd pint, I should put it.
Yeah. So, the question is, how do we redefine ourselves, when we're not partaking in social rituals that have been really popularized and really become kind of the focal points of not just, lives, but traditions. There's holidays, there's all these things, family gatherings, and they all seem to, rotate and be in orbit of this relationship with alcohol. It's a really challenging aspect to redefine ourselves against that. And I think that over time, successful people do. And look, I haven't ruled out, drinking utterly and completely in my life. Maybe I'll have a glass of wine somewhere. So it's all about integrating, at some point. But for now, my life just works a lot better when I'm not drinking. And I know that, that certain people, certain signs, have a real predilection for being susceptible to alcohol. Pisces is susceptible to alcohol because Pisces is so sensitive. It's an incredibly sensitive sign and a very spiritual sign. So Pisces need to take care of themselves when it comes to this and find other ways to cushion themselves from the shocks of the world.
Yeah, it's kind of that's what I mean about the corner. The full moon last weekend was kind of really, an orgy of alcohol, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Once you've actually got you trust yourself because there's none left, and you then take a step back and say, I think we need a different road to you.
Well, it takes a few days too. I mean, if you go through something like that, and you have an experience where you've just kind of let it rip, it takes a few days to just get back to baseline, to get through condemnation and recrimination and all that shit. And then you're like, okay, I did that. Well, now what do I want to do? How do I want to change and move forward? But those days afterwards can be really hard,
Yeah, it's kind of I'm a good place for this. It's kind of the way I needed it. It was like going 2 days
Sure.
So it's kind of, I can take a step back from a chemical head on, which I do. And self-pencil, and have good things in place that, as you rightly said, about socializing and things that are things in place into the life that perhaps that involve just socializing and people
Well, one of the things you talk about, Paul, is it's when you hit kind of an extreme point, right, or you cross over a line, what happens is that we get to. I think you went away. Did you go away? What happens is that he's calling back in again. So Paul, we're ending the show, and what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna hold off on answering, and we can talk after the show. I'm gonna just put you on hold because we're winding down here, and you and I can talk later if you want. But one of the things that happens when we get into an extreme environment is that we get to name our demons. We get to see our demons. The devils actually come into sight, and that's what happens. All right, listen, I'm gonna break the show down here, and basically, give it a rest for the end of the day. Well, so Paul, if you're listening, I'll talk to you after the show, all right? Because the connection is pretty rough, and we'll figure out a way for you to call in via Blog Talk, because you can do that, and I won't have to answer the phone on my cell phone. Okay? So, all right. Thank you everybody for chiming in. It's been a good show. I enjoyed hanging out and talking about the rise of the Ethiopian king. Love that. It was a great departure, and always love to get into the esoteric chatter and more. Okay, use your head to discern what's real, your heart to see what's possible. And by the way, love a Pisces. They deserve your love. They're good people. I got a little bit of feedback. I'm a little hard on Pisces. And you know what? My son's a Pisces. They're the best sign in the zodiac, okay? Most misunderstood, best sign. Do yourself a favor. Take a Pisces out to lunch, all right? Love you all. Robert Phoenix. Been navigating the astrological matrix. I'll see you on Friday with the Friday Forecast and hopefully a guest.
In the name I am that I am, son of tomorrow, I call forth the light of the living word, beloved Elohim, beloved archangels, beloved mighty choans of the rays and the lords of karma. I call for the action of beloved Pallas Athena, beloved goddess of liberty, beloved Nada, beloved Kuan Yin, beloved Portia, beloved great divine director, beloved all-seeing eye of God, Cyclopeia. Let God's will be done, let God's will be done, let God's will be done. I demand the action of the sacred fire in this hour. Descend on mighty cosmos, secret rays. I am the holding of the balance of Lord Gautama Buddha, beloved Sanat Kumara and the seven holy Kumaras. I call upon the sacred fire, I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved mighty, I am present, come forth in this hour of the victory. Come forth in this hour of the victory of the God flame. I demand the full power, beloved mighty, exceeding with us this night. Beloved Jesus, send to me, Lord mighty, Gautama and